It's the Jack and Joe show. Joe Sansom alongside me. We're still sixth in the table despite defeat at the weekend. How are you?
We are very well, and it's not the focus of today's episode, Jack, but I think we all enjoyed our result against Chelsea last week. First time we've spoken since then. Obviously, we've played another game since then, but it was one of those where I almost, during that Chelsea game, I was like, I don't care if we lose about 8-0 on the weekend to Newcastle, as long as we beat them. Obviously, I'd be a bit annoyed if it actually happened, but that Newcastle result did not get me as much as it normally would, because that Chelsea game will live in my memory forever, because we don't normally get one over them. So drink it in, embrace it. We play them again in a couple of weeks, and I loved it, Jack.
Yeah, it's quite sad that it's not like the focus of this episode because it was such a big occasion, such a big win, and meant so much to everyone at the club. So it happened. There's enough reaction from the podcast and from mainstream TV to sort of watch that and listen to that. So we're going to touch on Newcastle. We're going to look ahead to Spurs. We're going to talk about the transfer talk because it is hotting up in January.
Hotting up.
And obviously not only just for Fulham, but there are a few other deals that are like coming about. Bournemouth are getting busy as well. So and Wolverhampton Wanderers. So that's going to be interesting. But let's start at St James's Park. I mean, what's your take on the game? I was on the podcast the other day, so I've already had my say, really.
Yeah. So for starters, I wasn't there. I was watching at home. Sounds like everyone that went still had a reasonably good day, despite the result. And those that stayed for the weekend seem to have had a great time, as you would expect. My take on the game was, I didn't think we were the better side. I thought we were outplayed, but I thought that we defended very well for 89 minutes. And there was one slight, I don't know if you call it a lapse in concentration, a slight misjudgment on the header by Diop, who other than that was absolutely flawless and the clear man of the match for me. Wilson gets a little bit lucky with it falling back to him, flicks over to Isaac, and Tosin had lost his man. And it was just a bit of a shame that it ended like that, because I thought we defended really, really well at an awfully difficult place to go this season. They have not lost there. And that includes a game against City when they really could have won that game. My take on the game overall is I was a little bit disappointed on how we were looking going forward, but we looked a bit leggy. You can understand it. Newcastle had a bit more rest than us. So I was thinking maybe subs should have been made earlier. But this is the whole issue. I don't think our bench is super strong, which is why this window is quite important to take us to that next level if we can. But it's another game against a top 6 team that we've lost at the very end that we could have won. I mean, the Mitrovic penalty situation, in my opinion, this one is just incredibly unfortunate luck. I think that if Mitrovic had scored all his other penalties this season, I know he hasn't, and I know that that is a very big caveat. I don't think we're talking about him being taken off duties due to this one. I mean, I think that his penalty record up to this one meant that he probably shouldn't have been on it in the first place, but I don't particularly have much blame on him for this one. It's just an incredibly unlucky moment. And yeah, I think that's my take on the game. My take on the game is I was satisfied enough with the defensive performance. I was disappointed in how we attacked, but we mustn't forget we're going up against the best defensive team in the league this season. They just don't concede at home, really, aside from that City game when they get let in 3. And that happens against City and Haaland. So moving on swiftly to Spurs is my take on it. We're still 6th, which is fantastic. We only lost by a slender margin in one of the toughest places to go in the league this season. And look, I was still incredibly proud of the performance.
Yeah, I've got to agree that although we didn't create an awful lot of chances defensively, we looked really, really good, and that's encouraging. One lapse at the end. They brought on Isaac, and obviously having Isaac and Wilson's just going to add to that firepower they've already got. So I was sad for about 5 minutes, and then I was over it. I was like, you know what? We're still 6th. We've lost again by, like you say, a very slender margin. It's only the third game we've failed to score in this season, and obviously in 2 of those we've actually missed penalties or had penalties that have gone in but have been disallowed. So it's just one of those ones. And I think Spurs, and I think you'll agree, are for the taking. Definitely.
100%. 100%. I watched the North London derby. and I thought at the back they're an absolute joke. Like especially in that first half. Like Arsenal are a very, very good attacking side. Do not get me wrong; they cut through everyone this season, other than maybe Newcastle or City. They haven't played City yet, so we'll find out. But they couldn't cut through Newcastle. But for the rest of us, they're scoring a few goals and they're making chances at will. Spurs had some great chances in this game, and that shouldn't be forgotten. I do think going forward, they will always be an extremely dangerous side. We have to start fast because of this awful record they've got in the first half of games, which is just, it almost seems like it's unsustainable, like how many games they go behind in, or even 2 goals behind in. I'm nervous about Bentancur being back. We'll find out a bit more tomorrow when they play against Man City. Which, I don't know, come on you, suspensions and very minor injuries. I really hope that, they're leggy like we were against Newcastle. Kulusevski is a player that always terrifies me. Son hasn't been at his best this season, but he's always a daunting prospect to face. And obviously, Harry Kane had quite a poor game against Arsenal and still could have got a goal or 2. Going forward, defensively, we're going to have to be at the top of our game to stop them. But going forward, we can 100% cause them problems and score goals. And for that reason, I am feeling positive about this game. And the added incentive is that as long as they don't beat City tomorrow, I believe that a win takes us into 5th and above Tottenham, which is fantastic news. That is regardless of other results, obviously other than Spurs' match tomorrow. So Jack, team-wise, I mean, we'll have had a big rest by this point, so I don't think tiredness or fatigue will be an issue. Robinson will obviously be back from his suspension. At this point, no new injury news. Must stress at this point, we don't know what will happen in the presser in a couple of days' time. What would you do with the team? How would you try and unlock this Spurs team?
There was some chat about let's start playing Manuel Solomon, and I could feasibly see him maybe drop into the 11. But I think if we're thinking sensibly here, I don't think an awful lot changes. I think Unchanged would be fine. Bobby D, Cordova-Reid and Willian on either side, with Pereira sitting just behind Mitrovic, with Paulinho and Reid as the central defensive midfielders, with the same back 4. Obviously, Robinson comes in.
Yeah. I definitely don't think this is the game where you bring Tosin back in, because, to be honest, after that Diop performance, I don't think he warrants being dropped at all.
Yeah. So I mean, is there a case to bring in a Wilson or a Solomon or a James just to get at that defence? We might even see Ryan Sessegnon play at the Cottage in front of. I don't think he's played at the Cottage since he left.
Good point.
In front of fans, definitely. So I know we will give him a rapturous reception if he comes on or starts or whatever. But Joe, I'm super excited to play Spurs on a Monday night football.
Yeah,
should be great.
And I echo that, by the way. I really hope that we do give Sess a good reception, but I'll give him an even better reception if he drops as much of a stinker as he did in the North London derby the other day. I really hope that it continues that way. Touch wood. But also wish Sess all the best. He's getting a lot of stick from Spurs fans, which I don't like. He didn't play well the other day, but wishing him all the best. I think that I would go unchanged, other than Robinson coming back. So why am I saying unchanged? One change. Robinson coming back in. I've seen a few shouts for Kearney to start games ahead of Harrison Reed, and whilst I do agree that Reed maybe hasn't been quite at his best lately, I'm always cautious of starting Kearney. I think he's the player that you bring off the bench to control games or try and get a foothold back in games or chase games. I'm not sure he's a player you start, especially against this Tottenham midfield, which might have Bentancur back, as we said. I can just imagine Højbjerg or Bentancur nicking it on the halfway line off Kearney, like United did. And driving. And I feel like Kearney, if we need a goal or we're trying to hold on to the ball a bit better, that's who you bring on. Like we did against Chelsea when we were trying to get a foothold in the game when they'd gone down to 10 men. Score prediction. Now, I do want to quickly flag that I, for once, got a score prediction right in predicting a 2-1 win.
You did. I was going to mention it, yeah.
And this never happens. This is even rarer than us beating Chelsea. And that literally hasn't happened for 16 years. I'm just never right with the predictions. So I'm going to go for it again. And I'm going to go for a slightly more goal-heavy game. I'm going to go for a 3-2 Fulham win
Oh,
and a
what is
goal
that?
at the Cottage.
Oh,
I'm going for it. I can see them scoring against us with Kulusevski, Kane, and Son's had a bad season so far, but he always he can turn it on out of nowhere like he did against Leicester in September, I think it was, when he got that hat trick. I'm backing Mitrovic to get back in the goals with a reaction. Let's see what happens. But I'm going 3-2, Jack. What about you?
I think they'll score.
Yeah.
I think it will be a similar game to Man United at home without the last-minute winner. So I'm going to go 1-1.
Okay.
I think we'll come back
by the
from
way,
behind.
I think a point in this game, hugely respectable.
Oh,
Like, we
yeah,
have to
yeah,
remember,
honestly.
top 6 team at home, take a point.
It's amazing, isn't it? This season, we can even afford to lose to Newcastle, and even on my way up there, I was talking to people and going, if we lose today, it doesn't really matter. And anyone would have taken us to beat. It does matter, obviously, and people will be like, "Oh, it does matter. We need to win." Like, yeah, it matters. But in the grand scheme of things, we can afford to lose games. Look at the teams at the bottom; they're really, really struggling. Bournemouth can't buy a win. Everton are in trouble. West Ham as well. Moyes is on the brink. It really is extraordinary down there. And I cannot believe we're just not involved with any of that nonsense. It's so refreshing.
Is a surreal feeling, isn't it? That for example, that result the other day, and don't get me wrong, we might drop off, but I just don't think we're going to drop off anywhere near enough to ever be in any sort of danger, because we've racked up so many points. And that game the other day where it was Nottingham Forest against Leicester, Nottingham Forest scored, and I was thinking, if this had been played in August or September, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like, this is a terrible result for us. It literally doesn't matter. It does not matter.
Yeah. It's so weird. It's so weird because 2 years ago...
In fact, I wasn't even sad. I was thinking, like, oh my goodness, that drags Leicester a bit into it. That makes it interesting.
Was it SW6 Essential? Every single result, we were like, this means that, and this means that. This has just been extraordinary, where we just have not needed to worry.
Jack, I will never forget the days when we were looking at Newcastle's every result. And honestly, if they let a goal and I was cheering like I'd just been given 10 extra years to live. It was crazy. And they were still about 12 points ahead of us, by the way. Like, we never got that close other than that one game against Villa. Oh, God.
Brilliant, isn't it? It's amazing. And not only that, it's sort of segued into what we can talk about next. I believe that maybe if we get maybe 4 or 5 points in the next few games, once January passes, we can start looking at the summer and how we're going to recruit in the summer for the next season. Yeah. And you've got the likes of, I said on the podcast, like Pablo Mahi, like, it doesn't look, it's all gone very quiet, but the rumours are that we're going to actually approach that in summer and beat maybe the likes of West Ham, and can't remember who else is linked to the signing of him. But let's focus on January. And it's all got quite interesting over the last 48 hours or so. Do you want to explain and inform the listeners or the watchers what's been going on?
Yeah, so we've mentioned it on here before, but there's been rumblings about Cedric Suarez joining from Arsenal for a while. Now the Athletic, so obviously pretty much as reliable as you can get, have been reporting that we are in talks with Cedric himself. So that's like we're actually discussing terms with him. If it seems feasible, they're saying that we'll then try and agree a deal with Arsenal. We don't know whether that'll be a loan, which would obviously mean either Dan James or Shane Duffy returning to Leeds or Brighton, respectively, or whether it would be a permanent deal. And we don't know if it was a permanent deal, how much it would be. So there's still a lot of work to be done. They don't even know if Arteta 100% wants to let him go, because as of right now, they have Ben White as first choice right back. They have Tomiyasu, who's obviously very injury prone. And then there's Cedric, who can almost fill in either third choice right back or third choice left back. I would hope that there's enough reason to let him go. And if he was to be let go, it seems like Mbabu is on the way out. And we don't know if that would be permanent or on loan. And to where? Well, Jack, why don't you answer that question? Because this is just extremely funny.
Apologies, I think my Wi-Fi might have dropped, but if you could still hear us. Why is he being linked with Manchester United quite heavily?
God.
but also Monza in Serie A, which I think makes more sense due to the caliber of the player that he is. But Manchester United signing Mbabu would be like, well, what about Wan-Bissaka? What about Dalot?
Yeah.
What's the need? And like maybe it's because, you know, he then can't play on the last day of the season when Fulham are trying to win to survive in the Premier League, which obviously is not going to be a situation we're going to be involved in at all. It's utterly bizarre. And look, we only paid 6 million for him, so are we going to make a profit? Is he going to go out on loan?
I feel like a loan has to be the option, because I just don't think anyone's going to pay enough to warrant a sale right now. And almost our only hope of increasing his value when he's probably not going to play in our squad is for him to get minutes elsewhere, impress, and then go for a little bit more money next year or the year after, for example. I think one thing that is almost certain is that we will be signing a right back in this window. And whether that is Cedric or not, we don't know. We've been linked with a few other names with maybe not too much substance so far, such as Max Aarons, such as McNamara, even from Millwall, and a few foreign options as well. But Cedric seems like first choice. And the fact that, I mean, Jack, you were there at Marco Silva's presser before the, I don't know if it was before Chelsea or Newcastle. He basically said the Karsdorp rumour is not true, the Traore rumour is not true,
Chelsea,
but he did not rule out Cedric.
He was coy.
Yeah.
This is the last Premier League game we have before the end of January. So it's not a massive rush or panic to get these players in for particular games. I think even against Sunderland, I think we should start Tete, and even if we don't, it's not the end of the world to play Bobby D, Cordova Reid at right back. And then we've got the deadline day live stream, which might include the signing of Cedric Suarez. Like I could see it happening, being a late one, and everyone's sort of knows it's happening by the time we go live, and we're just there to confirm it and talk about other things as well. But there is no pressure on us at this moment in time. But would you like a centre mid in as well?
For me, I would actually say that a centre mid is necessary. And one of the reasons that I say that is because if you think about the Premier League suspension rule, and I know this is quite a silly thing to get into now, if you get 10 yellows, you have a 2-game suspension if you get them by the 32nd game. We've played 20, so we've got 12 games. So if Pelini gets 4 yellows in the next 12 games, so a yellow every 3 games, which, let's face it, is absolutely certain to happen.
Doable.
Then he will be suspended for 2 games. And I don't think we need Kearney starting for those due to his defensive efforts. I don't think we need Chalabar starting those for the obvious reasons. And I think that we need a centre mid anyway, just in general. Onama's probably going to go this window. Chalabar, not out of the question if there's a suitor. So I think we need another centre mid in. And I really think that it's a right back and a centre mid this window to make it a good one. Satisfactory, obviously, would be a right back probably. But a good window, I think, would be a centre mid and a right back.
I will be really interested on Monday. Obviously, we're going to be at the game, so we'll probably be in the pub or in the concourse before. But if anyone's watching Monday Night Football, I would be very fascinated to see what sort of coverage we're going to get, because I can imagine a lot of it is going to be Spurs going 2-0 down in most of the games, Conte, blah, 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 blah. But if they don't give us a 10-minute, 15-minute section on how good Fulham have been this season, I genuinely just give up, and you can't win. And I think that would be extremely sad and such a shame, because yet again, like, I know we lost on Sunday, but no one's talking about Fulham. And it's got to a point now where I'm like, can actually someone talk about Fulham? Because it's all fine going under the radar, but we're sixth.
I watched at home, and as many of the people watching will have done as well, the coverage for the game was an absolute joke in terms of how much of it related to Newcastle. I mean, and it was just one of those where I was thinking, are they actually going to mention us? Because if we were to have won that game the other day, I believe we would have gone about a point behind Newcastle.
Yeah, 1 point.
Like, it would have been something, it would have been crazy. So, yeah, Just a bizarre situation. I think we will get coverage, but it's going to be a great day, Jack. And I think I'm excited for our first Monday Night Football of the season. I believe it is. Really excited for it.
Yes, I think it is. Yeah. Super excited. Hopefully it's Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher, not Jamie Carragher and Guest. We'll see. Willie Gnonto has scored in the first minute in the FA Cup replay against Cardiff. He is some player. And I think, we could talk about the Premier League relegation race at another time because we're going to wrap up now. But I think Leeds will be fine. I think West Ham will be fine.
I think Leeds will end up being fine. I think for West Ham, it depends if they get rid of Moyes, because at the moment it's just not working out. And you never know what could happen if they change things. I mean, Leeds are rumoured to be thinking of replacements for Jesse March, according to a few reports. Wouldn't surprise me. There were a few March out tweets the other night at Villa, and that's normally a bad sign. Equally for Bournemouth and Gary O'Neill, who's not even been officially their gaffer for that long. I mean, he might go as well, especially with the new owners taking over. It's going to be fascinating. And it's so much more enjoyable to look at a relegation race when you're not in it. You're not biased. 3 are going to go, Jack, and let's face it, it's not going to be us.
Last point, I was thinking about this earlier. I think Burnley will get promoted and they will stay up. And I think it's now we look at the two other teams coming up, probably Sheffield United and the playoff winning team. I think Burnley are going to be absolutely fine. They look so good.
They do look good. They look a bit like us last year in terms of the style of play and the amount of goals they're scoring and how convincing they look. It'd be interesting to see what acquisitions they make. I'm assuming that they might be able to use companies' links to City to maybe snag a few on loan. I know they've already got a couple. They've got
Harwood Bellis. They've already got on loan.
Yeah,
they make
but I reckon they could probably go up a level. If they're in the Premier League, I'm sure City can send a few more fringe players their way. Maybe someone like, oh God, no, I won't think of a name now. But you know what I mean. Maybe like Palmer, for example, on loan.
Cole Palmer.
Why not? Yeah. It'll be interesting. And I know what you mean. It is time to start looking at those championship teams. I mean, let's face it, other than top 2, looks like a god-awful league this season, quality-wise. So someone's going to be coming up, which I don't think will be that convincing. No. We just have to hope that, they go straight back down, because it's all about, stay up the first year, then you've got to have 3 worse than you every year, and 3 more technically worse teams at the start of the window are coming up. You have to make that advantage count. Can't have second season syndrome.
No, I am scared of the Triple S, and obviously we're a team in London, and depending where we finish in the table, we're going to have a pool of some sort, be it Marco Silva, be it in London, be it maybe even Europe. So, fantastic stuff. Let's leave it there. We'll have a Jack and Joe show previewing the Sunderland FA Cup game, and then we go live for deadline day, and hopefully we got some nice deals to talk about. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure, Jack. Thanks everyone for watching, and enjoy the game on Monday night.
Apologies if we had any Wi-Fi issues. It does happen. And enjoy the United Palace game, which is on in about 10 minutes' time. And come on, Fulham. We'll see you on Monday night.